Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fred and John Talks.
Who are you?
I'm Fred.
Oh, I'm John.
I'm John. Okay, just so we don't get that mixed up, because we're getting older, forgetting our own names and our friends' names. This is our second episode in a series we're calling My Favorites and Why. And I did a first episode on my favorite movie, The Wizard of Oz. John is going to talk about one of his favorite movies today. And as always, if you like what you see and hear, we'd appreciate you sending likes, subscribing to our channel, and spreading the word. And so having said that, I hand it over to John to talk about his favorite movie and why.
Thank you, Fred. So the movie I'm going to discuss today, and you're probably going to have to help me with it a little bit, is Unbroken. The movie Unbroken. It comes from a book written by Laura Hillebrand, and the movie, I believe, was inspired and made by Angelina Jolie. But Fred, there's a phrase I want the listeners to remember throughout this discussion, because it could come back. It might resurface.
Okay.
The phrase is to live another 17 years.
17 years.
Yeah, that's what I want the audience to remember that.
Okay. What's your motivation for saying that?
Well,
How old are you?
It's kind of like a comic who puts out a phrase and then it may turn up later on in the discussion.
Okay. Okay. I'll try to be patient.
Okay.
Because now you got me curious.
Oh, you're intrigued. Okay.
I'm intrigued.
So, this movie, I'll tell you, Fred, I believe every American, indeed people perhaps throughout the world who are under 40 years of age, should really watch this movie because it is inspirational about this young man, Louis Zamperini. His family comes over from Italy and immigrates. They wind up in Torrance, California. And because of his athletic feats, he becomes known as the Torrance Tornado. Because of his athleticism and his running. There's so many features about life to be inspired by that I think everybody under 40 years of age who haven't maybe experienced a lot of hardship, difficulties, or who haven't exercised and tried to test their limits of strength, endurance, etc.
Reminds you of the Olympics.
The Olympics, and this would apply to everyone, not of all races and creeds. This movie is very inspirational. It also uncannily spans a period of time in history between 1938 and 1998 are some of the crucial years, and I'll get to that a bit later. But it covers World War II because everybody in the world, I think, agrees that World War II was a life-changing event. So here's Louis growing up in California. He's a bit of a bad guy, a bit of a bad boy, and he has an older brother, Peter, who starts influencing him and telling him, you can do better. You shouldn't be smoking and drinking and doing things that are harmful to your health and doing things that upset our parents. And one way or another, Louis gets inspired by running and becomes a really great athlete at running. He so much so that he gets into University of Southern California and becomes a sprinter. This is before 1936.
Mm-hmm.
And during this time, he becomes recognized with some high school and college records. And eventually makes the Olympic team to go to the Olympics in Berlin.
Okay.
So he gets the Olympics in 1936, and in one of the relay races, he runs one of the fastest finish times in his leg of the race. And then, believe it or not, he winds up so close to and near Hitler and Goebbels who are very influential in world history.
At the Olympic Games.
At the Olympic Games.
Because I just,
1936.
True confessions, I read the book too, but
Yeah.
I never did watch the movie. But
Okay.
go ahead.
So Hitler allegedly says to Zamperini after the games, you're the boy with the fast finish.
Mm.
Is that uncanny that this young man who came through a difficult early life gets to the Olympics in 1936 in Berlin, doesn't win any medals, but he gets the notice of Adolf Hitler.
Wow.
Because he's fast.
Yeah.
Well, then, fast forward a few more years, and bingo, Zamperini joins the Air Force because of World War II.
War II.
Okay? And during that time, he becomes a fighter pilot on the B-54s. And his plane, because of an engine failure, lands up in the sea, in the Pacific. And for 47 days, he survives on a life raft. I think it's one of the longest survival periods of time on a life raft.
Wow.
With two other people from the plane who eventually die on the raft. There's a terrible storm during this sequence of him being on the raft where he promises and prays to God that if you save me from this, I will dedicate my life to you.
We call it bargaining with God.
He was bargaining with God, and on his almost unbelievable circumstances at sea, he makes that promise, which comes back in later life. He does in fact survive, but unfortunately he survives by being captured by the Japanese.
He's a prisoner of war of the Japanese.
Yes, he is. And
survives 47 days at sea with sharks all around and with no very little drinking water, only to become a POW.
he learns how to eat the livers of sharks in order to stay alive and to drink seawater. So these kinds of true facts, since this is a real live story, should be inspirational to people around the world.
Absolutely.
And I think it's almost a movie that you could say everybody should watch. There's some tough, difficult parts to it, as in the book. But
It's a tough read.
It's a tough read. So he gets through the camp, Japanese camp, but he's got a tormentor who's a commander whose name is Watanabe. And despite all the beatings and despite all the hateful things that this commander does to him and forces him to do into forced labor, he later in his life, Louis wants to meet his tormentor,
Yeah.
which is uncanny.
May I throw in, having read the book, it's almost like, as I was reading the book, I was thinking, this reads more like a work of fiction. It's like, how could
Yes.
somebody survive these
Yes.
beatings? And I remember one scene where they routinely line up the POWs and they go down the line punching them in the face.
Yeah.
And not just once, Anyway, it's just a miracle that he survives not only the Pacific Ocean for 47 days, but these beatings.
Yes. It's really something, so much so that his parents, the U.S. government at that time was not able to confirm whether he was dead or alive, and they eventually contact his parents while he's in the POW camp that he's actually died. And so it was interesting that he came back to America and to California, and his parents were rather surprised. Because
Came back from the dead.
I came back from the dead. Well, some of the things he endured, he may as well have come back from the
Yeah.
dead. But despite all of that, he did revert to being problematic with alcohol and other behavior problems, which is not maybe surprising because we see this in prisoners of war, we see this in PTSD.
We call it PTSD now, yeah.
Exactly. We understand it better.
And he was self-medicating the PTSD with alcohol?
He was, yes. And it was in 1946, I believe, that he met up in a revival with Billy Graham.
This is after the war.
After the war, 1946.
Right.
So 36, he's in Berlin. He actually is touched by Hitler's voice, recognizing him. And he then becomes inspired by Billy Graham in 46.
I feel a religious conversion coming on.
He does. He converts. He becomes a messenger of help and God, and helps others, and lives his life in that vein. And it really pretty much, he turns his life around after 1946. So much so that
another miracle.
So much so that he becomes recognized slowly over time. But isn't this amazing? Somebody who has done all this survival doesn't really become that recognized until 1998. In the Olympics of 1998, he's asked to carry the U.S. flag.
I don't remember that
at the opening ceremonies.
Oh wow!
So to me, this kind of shows how important it is for people to take notice of this person and his struggles and his ability to overcome them, and his ability to show us that it can be done.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So he eventually lives to age 97. This is after the film is, the film was made by Angelina Jolie, and he dies in 2014. And unfortunately, even though she interviewed him and talked with him and was inspired to make the movie, and took various parts of what he said to put into the movie, he dies actually before the movie comes out.
The completion of the movie.
So he doesn't get to watch the...
Doesn't get to watch it.
Doesn't get to watch it. The other thing that I think is interesting about the movie is that throughout his life, before he dies, he wants to meet up with his tormentor.
I remember that well from the book.
Yes, with Watanabe, the Japanese commander. And he makes overtures to contact him. Yeah. Zamperini goes to Japan, and the commander refuses to see him. And I think, to me, as I analyze and think about the movie and his life, it makes me think, Fred, did Zamperini, who was at peace, apparently, want to help put his tormentor to peace?
Yeah, right. Right, because he had become a compassionate man through his Christian faith.
Yes. And this would have been an act of trying to help or convert Watanabe. Just imagine that meeting.
It's hard.
You know, I sit down with you, you've beaten me, you've spit on me, you've hit me with bamboo sticks.
You've tortured me.
You've tortured me. And I come to you and shake your hand and hug you. And how are you going to internalize and reflect on that? And what are you going to say in yourself about this person who's been through all this?
It illustrates a number of biblical passages. The one that comes to my mind is, pray for your persecutors, forgive your brother, 70 times 7, and
7 times 7,
it's just this is not within the realm of human scope. This is divine. You need divine intervention and strength to do that. To forgive somebody who tortured you half to death.
Absolutely. So
what about this 17 years thing?
Well, a couple of the things first.
Okay.
One of the other reasons I've been fascinated by this movie, because I love Shane, the movie Shane. I love Sleepless in Seattle. I love Tom Hanks. But this movie, after I thought about it and started reflecting about it and started doing research on it, reminded me of the fact that I'm part of this whole event too. Because I'm born in 1942. The war starts in 41. And Zamperini's joining the Air Force, and he gets shot down, and he's in this life raft while I'm becoming a teenager. it's very, very inspirational. And so when I think about it, and I see that he died at 97, that's your cue. He died at 97.
And you're how old now?
I'm 80.
Thus,
I
you're
would like.
saying,
I'd like to live another 17 years.
there you have it.
That's a wrap.
That's a wrap and a ciao.
Got to watch this movie. Thank you.
Ciao.
Ciao.